Welcome to the Postpartum is Forever podcast. My name is Katura Stoltenberg. I am a mother of 2 young men and a postpartum doula. This podcast is dedicated to all mothers and is a place to hear honest, relatable conversations with the intention of helping mothers feel seen, heard, supported, and valued. I believe that postpartum is forever and that sharing our stories is a powerful way that we facilitate connection with ourselves, our children, and our community. Thank you for being here. This week I have the honour of speaking with Ali. Ali is a mother, circle facilitator, postpartum doula, motherhood studies practitioner, and matrescence educator. During this episode, Ali gracefully shares with us her experience of losing her own mother to cancer and the impact that this deeply hurtful loss had on the way she mothered without the support of her own mother. She shares that despite the grief and devastation, she felt her mother gifting her the permission to show up in life in ways that matter most to her. Ali takes us through many of the emotions she experienced as her identity unfolded in motherhood, including learning how to take the evolution of being numb in anger to expressing rage, and then equipping herself to express anger in healthy ways and then to role model this for her children. Ali is a warm and sensitive soul. I found this conversation so heartwarming, and I'm sure you will too. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Ali. Nice to have you on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to see where we go today.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So where you're located, and you're a mother. How old are your children?
So I live in the Dandenong Ranges in Melbourne, in Victoria. I have 2 little guys, Harry, who is 4, and Patrick, who is almost 2. He'll be 2 next month. We live with my husband, Stu, and what else am I? I am a daughter, a sister, an auntie, a friend, and professionally, I am now a postpartum doula and a women's circles facilitator, and I've done training in motherhood and matrescence like you have.
Yes. Yeah, there's things that we could interchange. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about before becoming a mother? What did you do for work then, and did you find a fulfilling role?
Yeah, so I was a speech pathologist for 10 years prior to becoming a mum. I worked predominantly with kids with disability, I loved it. It was really fulfilling. It filled my cup. I felt like I was making a difference. I felt like I had community and a sense of belonging in being a speechy. Yeah, it was a really nice. It was a lovely, special career that I got a lot out of.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I know that you've had some life-changing events in that time of your career. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah, so the year that I became a new grad as a speechy was the year that I found out that my mum had cancer. So my career with a speechy really coincided or moved in the same way as alongside my mum's experience of cancer and ultimately her passing. So that was a huge, pivotal, life-changing experience for me at that time. I guess I don't know, there's so much that changed for me in the beginning when I first found out that Mum had cancer. I immediately made changes to move closer to home to be with her and change my work day from 5-day work day to a 4-day work week, so that I could spend Mondays as mum days. And yeah, I moved with her through that time, heading to chemo appointments and radio appointments and sitting with her, doing beautiful memory making moments of just like, I don't know, just having a cuppa together. We always love having cuppa and a chat and getting nails done and just spending really nice, easy, restful, quality time together in those times. It was really special.
I'm sure there are times that you'd never regret and you'll never forget.
Yeah, and I think that you realize how important they are. You kind of it's like you make these decisions that you don't really know are like so life changing for you in sometimes in those moments. Like for me, I didn't really think twice about it. It was just the idea that I needed to be with Mum in that time, and take that extra day off. And it was the same towards the end of her life. Mum's passing was like kind of a labour really in itself, in that it took a long time. And it was probably about a month that yeah in that it took for Mum to pass. And in that time, another decision that was made by our family was to just like hit pause pretty much on life and move into the slow separation that is these rites of passage, and move away from the outer world, and we created our inner world of shift working, going in and out of the hospital all the time, all living together in across two houses, and camping in that farm, and all eating and living together for a month, and supporting Mum in that time.
So are you referring to your siblings and their children as well? Were you all living together?
Yeah, so how it worked was, my sisters both came home, but also Mum's from a family of 13, and so it was most of her siblings as well. So
13.
yeah, and her mum as well. So
Oh, wow.
they got an Airbnb just near the hospital, and moved in, and we all shared food and looked after each other. And it was hard, like it wasn't easy, but it was these decisions you make that make for a sacred pause, right? You know?
Yeah, and as you said, it's sort of like an automatic decision. There was no need to think about it. There was things that needed attention, and that's what you did. But so in times like this, it would have been so many emotions and so much it wouldn't have been all beautiful, and there would have been conflicts. There would have been all sorts of things.
Yes,
yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to go down that path, but maybe just in terms of, it was just a tricky time. Yeah. But it's just something you go into autopilot.
Yeah, but and you feel so thankful that you make these decisions now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and I really am so sorry for your loss. It's it can feel very vulnerable and very fragile to be talking about it, but so many people are experiencing similar things. So I think it's so wonderful that we are bringing this into the dialogue so that we can potentially help someone else or another mother to feel seen and heard as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go.
Sorry, just to say that you are not alone if this is something that you also experience.
Yeah. Sadly, it's yeah. So fast forward, what sort of things, how did your life look after your mum passed? What were those first few, take us through, what was those first few months like for you?
Yeah, so while we were in the sacred portal of death, I had started a new position as a speech pathologist, and it was a 6-month contract. And so I was constantly every week getting phone calls from them while we were in this time, waiting for mum to pass. And so I had to go back to that role when mum died. I think I had 2 months left on the contract. And so that was plainly just awful, just awful. I didn't know the people there because I just started at this new role. I think I did a month before or less maybe, and as kind and thoughtful as they were with cards and of condolences and it's just I felt like I was walking around like a zombie. Like I just between every client, I would cry in the bathroom. I remember telling one client, she was really annoyed at me because I'd been away for so long. I was like, my mum died. And she was just like so unsympathetic. And it was just such an awful experience. So for me, work was not the answer. I know that, and family members of mine went to work and that was helped them in their grief. But for me, I needed to just be by myself, work out who I was. And so after that, I took 6 months off work. I didn't go back. I pretty much did every type of self-development kind of work you could do in that time. I did things like Couch to 5K, like app where you run, and I remember just running and bawling my eyes out in the rain, like just like a movie, just like every day, running and crying. I learned how to do yoga for the first time. I couldn't afford to pay for a yoga membership, but I cleaned the yoga studio so that I could go to yoga a couple of times a week. And I, again, sat in child's pose and cried a lot of it. I learned to journal. I hired a life coach, and she helped me to learn a lot about like my boundaries and the things around my family that and then my stories and different, really all sorts of different things. I learned to meditate through her. I also had a psychologist that saw every week. What else did I do? Like, there was so much. There was something what I didn't do pretty much. Like, there was so much at that time that I just immersed myself in. And oh yeah, I learned how to weave, like like those wool weavings. But yeah, I did that while listening to like spiritual podcasts, and yeah, I did it all. And I'm so thankful and grateful that I had the space to do that. I was partnered with Stu at the time, my husband now, and he still worked in that period so that I could have that pause. I know that that is a privilege in itself. And it started the shedding of lots of shoulds and lots of ways of being, and thinking about my boundaries and thinking about who I want to let into my space. And there was just a lot of like starting to really understand and unpick who I was and who I wanted to be and what my values were. And it was a really big time identity shift for me in that period. At the end of that time, my husband and I decided to go overseas for a year. So I ended up spending 18 months off work, which was ended up being like such a transformational experience in itself, where we learned how to really be ourselves and without all of the outside noise and the obligation of you know, I don't know, being whoever we thought we were. We could just be Ali and Stu in Israel, Ali and Stu in the UK, Ali and Stu in Europe. It didn't matter. We were whoever we wanted to be, which was a really nice experience.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Glad you got that opportunity. And it's it's a fragile subject, but what I've also heard in your voice is hope and joy and opportunity for beautiful things.
Yes, yeah, and actually that's such a good point, because something that Mum's death really allowed like openness and opportunity. As awful and sad and heartbreaking and that I wish her here every day. She gave us permission to go and live life in the way that we wanted to live. She gave us permission to live like we won't be here forever. And that makes me feel emotional thinking about it, because it really did, it's as hard as it was losing her, it was it changed my life forever.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I trust you are enjoying this episode. I know that if you are listening to this podcast, you are likely a woman who deeply cares about her mothering practices. I invite you to sign up to my email list found on my website, motherhoodwithkatura.com.au, for semi-regular emails that include blogs, recipes, and information relating to a variety of motherhood topics. If you are pregnant or know someone who is, head over to my website and sign up to receive your free copy of the postpartum checklist and important contacts list. And so that we can get these conversations out to more mothers, I'd be grateful if you could like, share, and review this podcast. It really does make a difference. Back to the episode. It's your experience with your mother and how you've mentioned that she gave you permission to do a lot of things, because in the grief and in the experience that nobody ever wants, you also were given permission and opportunity and kind of evaluating everything in your life and where your values lie and what's important. And I love that you went overseas and you said you kind of just distance yourself from the world's expectations of what we're supposed to be doing from 9 to 5 and everything else, and the weekends. And so, yeah, beautiful. This is the sort of thing we also see in new mothers, isn't it? It's a real catalyst for change and growth, and it's when identity comes under scrutiny as well. Of course, a new mother's not going to see it that way if she's, really in just that survival mode, and it can feel really scary and destabilizing, which I'm sure are similar feelings to how you felt very early after the loss of your mum. So I feel it's so interesting how there's a lot of correlation to those two experiences. So moving into losing your mother and then becoming a mother, what did that raise for you? I'd love to know.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think, postpartum, right? It's so big, and it did. And always, each experience that I have had has brought up new things for me. Yeah, I think, for my first postpartum, I with Harry, I was very much, um, head in the sand and like, did not know what to expect, just feeling like it's going to be joyous and fun, and we're gonna build a family and, um, all of the good, um, cozy cuddles and newborn, smells and all of those things. And I guess uh, reality of normal things that, like, I know that being a postpartum doula now, I'm aware that many mums go through in terms of the big shifts around physical and emotional changes, and hormonal changes and all of those sort of things and identity shifts. In terms of, like, I guess the lens or the extra layer of things, for me, in not having mum. So mum died 3 years before I had Harry. Um, and when mum first died, and I think that this would be a common experience for people who have lost somebody, you feel like you want to call them all the time. Like, you'd want to do the things that, like, you did with them. And so, like, for my mum, I literally called mum every day. Like, that was as soon as I moved out of home, I would call her every day. It was just something we did all the time. And I think that even 3 years post her death, in my early postpartum days, I was still felt like I just wanted to call mum. I just wanted to pick up the phone and just be like, "Mum, this is happening," or "Mum, come to help me," or, and, like, it was like this clunky thing where I would want to do that and then have to think of who else I could ask for that, and then think, "Well, I'm not gonna get." Like, for me, my mum was always what I needed, in those phone calls, but I know that I don't get that from everybody in my life, and so I would have to, like, consciously go, "Okay, well, I'll call dad if I want physical support, and I'll call my auntie if I want emotional support, and I'll talk to my sister if I wanna bitch about something," or, like, I'll have to have, like, a purpose behind each thing. Like, I couldn't just call mum for all of the things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like it was, like, this clunkiness in, like, yeah, um, trying to get the support I needed from just my mum. And yeah, so that was really, a big thing in and my first postpartum, and I think, just outsourcing that all the time, outsourcing that by us calling other people, outsourcing that by asking professionals for help, calling, like, outsourcing that by getting a sleep routine, by, like, being controlling of the food that he ate, like, just constantly, like, seeking control, and that from external sources was a really big thing in that postpartum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Um,
You, especially as you've mentioned, you had such a close relationship with your mum. There must have been such a void there that,
mm,
I losing my dad is an experience that I'm 12 years later still struggling with. And it's just that even if you want to talk to them, you can't,
yeah.
physically in front of you. And that hurts. That really hurts. And yeah, it's hard. And everybody grieves differently, don't they? And I think that this is an important message. There'll be mothers listening today that maybe are in a similar situation as you, in that they've lost their mother through death. But then there'll also be a lot of mothers that have a mother but they're not actually emotionally or practically present for them.
Yeah.
And there's such a yearning when you have a child. You know, we know when we birth a baby, we also birth ourselves as a mother. And so we are quite vulnerable. Our needs are very high, and we're craving a mother or a mother figure to mother us, because we are also feeling like we are needy. And so I think there might be some other mothers listening also who have a mother, but maybe their mother, for whatever reason, didn't have the capacity or is carrying her own, carrying something heavy herself, was not able to do that with her growing up. But I also think that there is maybe a little bit of hope and a little bit of, you know, wish that suddenly that mother might be able to step up. And I have talked to mothers in the postpartum space where they were not sure if their mothers would be present. They were not sure if their mothers would be someone that they could use as a sounding board or hold space for. And they have done that. And that's really beautiful.
Mm.
But then there's the realization for a lot of mothers that that is not going to be the way it is. It's not going to change. And I think there's intense grief that can be experienced differently from the reason, but the same feelings. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that as well. And it reminded me, like, so for my second postpartum, one thing that really came up for me was actually lots of my childhood memories and wounds. And I think that that is also really common experience for lots of people, is for these things to surface and be reminded of, and like to look at our babies and think about ourselves as babies, like it's so, and as
Totally.
children. And I know that for me, in as I with my second postpartum, it was really these big wounds around uh, my childhood and the things that came up for that, and then the things that I wanted to talk to mum about that I couldn't talk to mum about, and the grief and anger and like just a cumulative loss almost of that, not being able to like have anywhere to put that memory or that thought, or to like see what her side of it was, or what, like all of that as well. So there's like that definitely came up for me in my second postpartum, which was not there in the same way in my first, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of those least talked about subjects, such as anger and rage. What has shown up for you in those areas?
I love talking about anger because it's such a topic that I think a lot of us experience and not many talk about. For me, I actually went from like feeling numb in anger to like learning how to express it, which seems a bit strange maybe to some people. Are like, oh, why do you like want to be angry, like, or something, because it's not like it's a bit taboo. But for me, it was actually really healing. I in my 1 year postpartum with Harry, my first, I went to a psych because I couldn't feel anger. So I was watching our very wakeful son make my husband very angry. And I would sit on the bed, do out like going in and out to tend to Harry, and just not feel anything. I'd just be like I just didn't feel, I didn't feel angry in the same way that I could see clearly was angering my husband. And it was this really, and how uncomfortable it made me feel. And I was thinking about other times in my life, like I had been and when we were overseas, actually, I was sexually assaulted, and
Mm.
I didn't feel anger
Mm.
at all. Like I just ended up saying like, no, thank you to this man. And I was just like the strangest thing. That I was just like, oh, like this. I just felt like this really, like what didn't feel right in my body. And so yeah, I went to see this psych. And at a really similar time, I started to study with Dr. Sophie Brock and her work. And I was thinking, oh, like this is an individual problem. Like there's something wrong with me. I
Mm.
cannot, like, why can I not feel anger? Why am I so numb to this? It's like, it's angering what we're like, that Harry is waking up all night. Like, why is this, And then I was like, it's my fault. It's my problem. And I went and saw the psych. And then I did a bit of Sophie's work and I went, I don't think it's my problem. I think it's society's problem. I think I have been taught to be the good girl and not keep my anger down. Don't express anger. Tears are okay. You can cry, but do not ever raise your voice and show anger. Um, and it makes me feel angry now because because that's who I was and that was how I was brought up. And a lot of us are like, I'm not saying it's my parents' problem. It was like a societal problem. And yeah, and so I went from this idea that it was my problem and my problem alone to realizing that it was a bigger problem and it was much more than that. And then started to get these little bits of anger come up and start feeling them. And really, it wasn't until I had 2 children that anger became really big in my life. In my early postpartum, Stu was away a lot for work. And I had a lot of trouble breastfeeding and was in a lot of pain. Physically, I had a big abdominal separation where I couldn't move in the way that I wanted to. Yeah, he was away a lot. I had those childhood memories that I told you about coming flooding through, and I was sleep deprived and all of the things that you are in new motherhood with 2, the push and pull of 2, and my anger exploded. Like it was like hot lava pouring out and just exploding everywhere, all over everything. I had a phone call with my husband at 2 o'clock in the morning when he was away somewhere for work and just went into, like, I wasn't in my body. I was literally not in my body. I was so overtaken by these feelings of anger um and just said all of the things that you say in those moments. And it was shocking. It was really shocking. It was scary. It was scary for me and it was scary for Stu. Um, and it was a big red flag saying, I need my needs need to be met. I need this. Like it was information for us and for me. And he decided to not do the last leg of his overseas trip, and we changed a lot of things. But yeah, like I, and now it's really interesting. I went from this numb state to this explosion state, and now I am learning to be somewhere in the middle, and it's a continual learning process, right? But I am now um, knowing how to express my anger in safe and healthy ways. And I'm teaching my sons to do the same thing at the same time because I'm learning it and they get to learn it with me. And I'm, punching pillows and I'm,
Mm.
screaming when they're not around and I'm dancing and I'm stomping my feet and we're screwing up, ripping paper together and we're like expressing anger in healthy ways that I wasn't taught how to do. And in the moment stuff and out of the moment stuff, and it's been such a journey, Katura. Like, it's just been such a journey.
Yeah,
Oh,
I hear you. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
The birthing
totally.
mother and Engard just sort of don't match up. But look, I just want to say, with all that you have gone through, why wouldn't you be angry? Like, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I say to the mums I work with. Like, I often say, "It's okay to be angry." Like, of course you'd be angry.
Course. And
Yeah.
that is, we've grown up thinking that it's almost a dirty word, and
Mm.
especially for somebody, for a woman who is supposed to be polite and well mannered, and that doesn't really match up with explosions. And
Yeah.
yeah, but it's a normal human emotion.
Yeah.
And if we didn't have times where we were angry, then somehow we're suppressing whatever it is that's underlying the anger, which could be frustration, resentment, perfectionism, all sorts of things. So
Yeah.
it's a good reminder to just tell mothers to realize that anger is just information.
Yeah.
It's telling us, okay, something's not feeling, right in our system. Something in our life is not balanced or fair. And
Mhm.
it's a little prompt, isn't it, to change something.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and you want to be able to share that with your children. You want them to see you in your full spectrum of emotions. And you want to be able to teach them how they can manage their anger when it comes to, so that they're not suppressing it as well. But
Mm.
it's beautiful that you've always turning everything into a positive experience and a learning experience.
Oh, it's ongoing, that's for sure. One of the things that I've just been learning, I've been doing Stone's like
Mm.
parenting immersion at the moment, and one of the things that she talked about is like, if you're like authentic in your emotions with your children. So, say your child comes up to you and says like, "Oh, are you feeling angry, mum?" And you just go, "No, I'm okay. No, I'm not feeling angry." Then it like um, makes them distrust their intuition. And
Mm.
that was like such a big thing for me, because I was just like,
Mm.
oh,
Wow.
I want my boys to feel like they could trust what their inner knowing is. Like, that's like what I've been relearning for so many years since like I've started on this path. Like, I've wanted to like reconnect to my inner knowing, to reconnect to my intuition. And that's what I talk about with mums all the time. And if I just do a simple thing like be authentic in my emotions in front of my kids, like, oh, okay, I can do that.
Yeah. And that's, that is parenting in the most beautiful, authentic way, is teaching
Mm,
them via our modeling how humans are very complex, and we don't need to hide how we're really feeling.
yeah.
No, a lot of mothers don't feel comfortable to cry in front of their children, for instance. And I was doing the same thing for many years. And then I thought, no, actually, I want them to see me crying.
Mm,
And not necessarily because they've hurt me or it's something to do with them. It's just a normal human emotion and physiological response to needing to reduce stress levels.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. So I think you've talked about a lot of the things that we were planning to talk about. Maybe I'd just like to talk about the seasons of motherhood. So that's something I talk about. It's a very nice analogy to use for motherhood, because it's, first of all, brings attention to that there's many emotions and many experiences, and there's some easier times and darker times and more challenging times. But what does seasons of motherhood actually mean to you?
Mm, yeah. I love using the seasons analogy too. To me, it's from the work of Nikki McCann, who I've done my training with, and it's really like layering the seasons of motherhood like you see the seasons of the outside world. And that's how I see, like, so there's a winter, there's spring, there's summer, there's autumn, and we go in a cycle, like, and it's ever evolving and ever changing. And that's how I see the seasons of motherhood. And what I in my experience, they're like, for me, a really wintry moment, a time of darkness, a time of inner, like, going inward and trying to work out who I was that time, that 6 months post mum's death, when I was trying all of the things and trying to work out who I was and feel into that, like, unknown, and being present in that unknown, and sort of feeling the feels and being in the moment. And that's, like, for me, that's what winter really is, like, um at a human level. That's what
Mm.
winter feels like. And I think that I've had those moments in my motherhood with early postpartum, in that time when I was talking about being angry and being in pain from breastfeeding, and recovering physically from my birth. And that was an inner winter for me as well. But what I love about having the seasons lens is that after a winter, there's always a spring.
Mm.
And I just feel like that for me is so comforting, because I know that nothing lasts forever.
Yeah.
And that I can be present here in my winter, because I'll know that there'll be a spring again. And that, like, just brings me so much comfort.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the biggest takeaway for me when I'm thinking about the seasons, is that even if we are in an uncomfortable season, just sitting with that discomfort, because it is going to pass and we are going to move through. We're often trying to wish our life away, or wish away our children's lives, or see, when they finish teething, we'll be okay, and when they start walking, we'll be okay, and when they go to school, we'll be okay. But it really is a nice reminder of just trying to stay in the moment and in the current
Yeah.
season, because there's always beauty even in the darkest seasons.
Yes, I love that. And I think that, as a society, we just love summer, right? We just love the sparkly and the fun and the outgoing and the heat and the warmth and that it's like the same as, like, when we're in terms of menstruation cycles. It's like the ovulation. It's this beautiful outpouring, outgoing kind of thing. But, like, there is so much beauty and value in the darkness as well.
Yeah, yeah. This has
Mm.
been such a lovely, enriching conversation. I'm going to ask something that hopefully is not putting you on the spot, because I
Okay.
haven't mentioned it, but it's more
Mm.
about, so what I'm hearing from your experience is that you've had to do a lot of learning and unlearning, and really getting to the absolute core of who you are. What have you learnt about yourself that you didn't know was actually there?
Hmm. Um, I think I've embraced my tenderness,
Mhm.
my, like, open-heartedness, um, uh, and um, yeah, like, the idea, like, I did I'll give an example. I did a birth debrief training last year, and um, I just I just cried, like, in this one moment, just, like, crying, crying. And somebody looked over, one of their participants looked over at me, and she's just like, "You okay?" I was like, "Yeah, this is how I feel." And it was, like, a really big moment. Like, my learning and my unlearning is, like, it's okay to feel this way. it's okay to like cry when it's sad. It's okay to like, I really feel other people's feelings, and that's okay. That's been a really big thing for me that still feels um, vulnerable.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, considering you've had to share something that you were not expecting to share. But
I hope
yeah,
it answers your
appreciate that.
question okay.
Yeah, it definitely did, because motherhood is like that, and you've had extra layers to it. So um, it is so therapeutic, isn't it, just to stop and think, like really reflect on the ways we have changed,
Mm.
because we do tend to get caught up in all of the things that we're not doing as well as we think we should be doing,
Mm.
and all of the expectations that society puts on a mother. At no other time really in that person's life than when they become a mother. And so it's just nice to think about how much we've grown and how much we've blossomed, um, and the things that we have learned about ourselves, the real person, the person that we've probably always wanted to be, but didn't know it was possible. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I love hearing your experience, because I can actually, it's tangible even through the screen, how much these experiences have impacted your life in so many beautiful and positive ways, that it's such a refreshing conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So is there anything else you did want to say before I ask the final questions that I ask everybody?
No, I don't think so. Feeling good.
Mm. Yeah. I think we're all just going to sit with this and ponder some of the things. I know I will. I'll be sitting with the conversation after this and just really absorbing it, because there's so many little gems there. So one of the questions I ask is, what do you know now as a mother that you wish that somebody had told you before?
I think it is, you are not alone. I think that each experience that we go through is our own experience. But what I have found when sitting in circle with women, in hearing women's birthing stories, in hearing women share their postpartums with me, is that we have such a universal experience, and um, feeling less alone can be so comforting. So you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah, we are more alike than we are different, aren't
Yeah.
we?
Yeah.
These mother circles are just so powerful. When women get together, I think especially mothers, um, some really profound things can evolve from those conversations, and they're so reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know even as a facilitator in certain things or one-on-one work with postpartum clients, I learn just as much from the mothers I work with, or more, than they learn from me. So this mother sharing is really, really powerful, and I think that's something to encourage, and to look for these mother sharing circles in everybody's individual locations, and if they're not available, start one.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, yeah. And what would you say to a mother who might be grieving in some way, in whatever situation that she has? She's grieving the loss of something. What would you say to her today to make her feel a little less alone and encouraged?
I feel a bit emotional. I just want to say that I see you. I see you. I really do. I have been where you have been. And I see you.
Yeah. Perhaps we can both just sit for a minute. It's hard. Yeah. Thank you, Ali.
You're
Yeah.
so welcome.
I've really appreciated having the opportunity to chat with you, actually. Your openness, sharing, but sharing with compassion and grace. It's been a really beautiful thing to observe. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I've just loved this conversation. And I thank you so much for holding space for me today.
Yeah, I think we should do this again.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
All right. Well, thank you. And I hope the rest of your day is calm and peaceful. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that it offered something helpful to your own mothering experience. If you are a pregnant woman or know someone who is, head over to my website to receive your free copy of the postpartum checklist and contact list. And if you'd like to be better prepared for your postpartum, both practically and mentally, purchase the Peaceful Postpartum ebook, a 52-page interactive guide on what you need to know and what matters most in postpartum. And so that we can get these conversations out to more mothers, I'd be grateful if you could like, share, and review this podcast, and we'll see you next time.